What's up, crew? Welcome back to the channel. This is Chaz with Side Hustle Network. And this is video number 1 of a 4-part series, which is going to show you step by step how to complete an FBA shipment in Inventory Lab. This is not going to be the typical 5-minute tutorial where I sit here and talk to the camera about doing a shipment and how to do it. I'm going to show you the entire process from me unloading my car, exactly which products they are, how to do the prep, how to check them into Inventory Lab, the settings that you need, the supplies that you need, all the way down to the box contents and the final box shipping labels. This will be a detailed video, so sit down, take notes, and enjoy. And before we dive in, I'll just say real quick, this is only one of many different ways to do a shipment through Inventory Lab. This is the most basic, easy way to do it. There are other techniques which we can dive into in future videos. And the 4 parts to this series will be video number 1, which is this one right here, which is going to dive into the exact settings and supplies that we use for our shipping. Number 2, we'll dive into the data entry. That is simply checking items into Inventory Lab, inputting your data, which is going to be the supplier, the buy cost, expiration date, if you need it. All that stuff will be covered in video number 2. Video number 3, we'll dive into the physical prepping of the different products. Video number 4, we'll dive into the box contents portion. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get to the other warehouse next door to us so we can get started on this shipment. All right, so step number 1, we have to go over to the other warehouse spot. We actually have 2, so we have this building right here and then one of the bays over here. So we have to go in here, got everything set up. I'll show you guys the whole process. So first, here are all of the supplies I'm going to be using specifically for this shipment. It just depends what you guys are prepping at home. That's going to correlate down to what supplies that you need. And because people always ask, where do we buy all of our stuff and what specifically are we using? You can check out the link in the description to see everything that we use and direct links to find them. So the bare minimum that you will most likely need is a scale. Obviously, this one has been well loved. We usually have this taped up onto something, which is why it's all sticky and residue. We've had this for like 4 years. This thing has been an awesome scale. You will need tape. You will probably need a tape measurer so you can measure out what the dimensions are in your final boxes. A pen to write your box information, and I'll show you guys all of this stuff that I'm talking about towards the end of the video. Box cutter, glue gun, especially in today's shipment, I'm going to be taking off some clearance stickers, so glue gun and a rag, definitely a must-have for that. Along with sticker removal, I highly recommend an actual heat gun. I had one in here. It looks like my team probably stole it and took it next door. But instead of a regular hair dryer, you want to use an actual heat gun because it's going to be a lot more focused, actual heat to get those stickers off. That's kind of all you need for the bare bone basic setup. Poly bags are going to be great because if you have any type of toy that has an open face, if you are doing multi-packs or bundles, personal care, grocery, these things are awesome. I do have some Funko Pops in this shipment, so I am going to be using a Funko Pop specific box along with bubble wrap. I'll show you guys what I'm doing with the bungee cord here in a little bit when we do that. And that's kind of it. You don't need a lot to get started as far as supplies go. These are kind of just the essentials, and then these are some extras depending on what type of prep that you are going to be needing. This is what I'm using today. So with that being said, let's go. Step number 1, before we start any of these shipping, is we actually have to unload all of the inventory. I've got some left over in my car. This was all stuff that was inside of my office. So now I simply need to get all this unloaded. Step number 1, any shipment that I do is I line everything by SKU ahead of time on the table. So it's a lot easier to manage. If you are working in a small space, whether that is your garage or a spare bedroom, something like that, you want to make sure that you have a clean workstation, be as organized as you can. But if you do get to the point where you can get a little bit of warehouse space or a larger size garage of some sort, I highly recommend these flexible rollers. I just got these 2 in yesterday and they've been absolutely awesome. They condense down to only be about 5 feet long and they extend out by 24 feet. So these have been well worth it. I forgot to show you 2 other crucial supplies I would highly recommend that you get. And real quick, because I just realized, number 1, get your boxes, whether you are loading the final products into boxes or unloading boxes, get your boxes off the ground. That's going to save your back and your energy. These we pick up at IKEA, just little pretty They're not super sturdy, but they get the job done. We've used these for a few years. IKEA nightstands, so between 10 and 12 bucks for those. Second one is going to be bed risers. I also know people that will use PVC pipe to extend the legs on your tables, because when you are hunching over these tables back and forth all day, it could definitely strain on your back after doing a shipment for 2, 3, 4 hours. So get your tables up, get your boxes off the ground. Same thing with your scale. We have a metal cart that we put our scale on. That way when we are picking up these 30, 40 pound boxes and weighing them, we're not taking them from the ground up and ruining our back. So get everything up to at least waist level height for you. All right, so we've got everything laid out on the tables. Pretty much just gonna be a toy shipment. I have a bunch of other different types of products, clothing and shoes that we're gonna be shipping out. Those always get split into different warehouses anyway, so I'm just gonna show you guys the toys for today. As far as prep, there's not much needing to be done, being that most things are inside of a box by itself, like these transformers. You're gonna label right over the UPC, which we'll show you in the actual shipping portion. Games, again, just right on the back over the UPC. Funko Pops, I always bubble wrap and then put them inside of an 8x6x4 box, which I will also show you. For the most part, none of this really needs prepped, except for open face toys like this will need to be polybagged. I will show you all of that. Especially these large ones. We do have large poly bags that can fit that as well. Same thing with the back table. Most of it is pretty much just all going to be just straight labeling, not much prep needed. Now, quick side tip, because I made a tremendous mistake as I'm pulling all of this out of my car. Traditionally, what I tell people to do is if you are doing retail arbitrage, keep boxes in your vehicle to keep things organized. Because what happens is I was in a rush, threw everything in my car, and this was piled up over the last week. So when I put more stuff on top, being unorganized, I now have box damage. So before you start a shipment, you should always be very familiar with Amazon TOS. I cannot ship box damaged stuff in as new. And being toys, we cannot sell them used. So something like this is going to be pulled off of here and go into eBay, and there's several items like this. There's a Lego set right here, box damage as well, especially something like a collectible like Legos, Funko Pops. Never want to see any type of scratches, dings, box damage. You want to have pristine boxes. Now that I'm looking at it, this corner here, totally fine. We can still pull a profit off of eBay with those. I did just want to point that out as a reminder. Always, always, always make sure your box conditions are pristine. The product might still be brand new inside. Amazon doesn't care. Amazon cares just as much about the box condition as the product itself. So if you're going to be doing retail arbitrage, RA, make sure you keep boxes and keep your stuff organized inside of your vehicle. So that's always step one, organize everything by SKU onto the tables. What you can even do too, not so much with a shipment like this where I don't need much actual prep done, but you can organize by prep needs as well. So if you have a bunch of products that need poly bags, batch those together on one table. So you have one dedicated kind of poly bag station. You don't have to bounce back and forth from one end to the other on tables, pulling and picking different poly bag needs. You could just keep everything organized in one spot. That covers the basics of step one, get everything organized, ready to go. Now we will hop over onto the inventory lab side and show you guys exactly how to do this shipment. But first, before we dive into the actual inventory lab shipment part, I'll show you guys kind of the supplies setup for what we're using on this cart. Now, obviously this has evolved over the years that we've been doing this. We have a little more space to work with. If you have space, I would highly recommend get your stuff mobile. This is on a mobile cart. We just got this off of Amazon. This allows us to move the cart as I'm checking stuff in, so I'm not having to jump back and forth. For example, in our old setup back in our garage days, we just had our laptop and our printers right at the edge of the table or even in the middle, but we still would have to walk over, grab a product, bring it back to the computer, get the label. It was a lot of back and forth, wasted motion. So get your stuff mobile if you can. As far as basic supplies, Dymo 450 as far as item labels go, and then we have the Rollo here on the left side for shipping labels. Let me preface with this, you do not need both. If you have a Rollo or a Dymo 450, you can get away with just swapping out the labels, and you can print your item labels and your shipping labels off this if you don't mind swapping. I'm honestly lazy, it's a convenience thing, so we have both. Last piece of equipment I would highly recommend, once you get to this point, you don't need this at all until you get to a point of scaling in your business. get a big old battery pack. We use the Jackery battery, that's a 500 watt. That does cost about $500, so do not invest in this until you get to that point where it's going to be worth the cost. We have several of these workstation setups. This is the 4th station that we have because we run an Amazon FBA prep center. So we are doing 3, 4, 5, 6 shipments per day. But this allows us to be completely 100% mobile without needing to run extension cords back and forth. Now, for those of you with most likely the average setup where you are in your home or your garage, you do not need anything as fancy as this, but those are just some pieces of equipment that have really helped us out just as far as speed and efficiency and convenience. So without further ado, let's get onto this keyboard, show you Inventory Lab. All right, so now that we are here on the Inventory Lab side, before we start the actual batch is what that's called when you go to create an actual shipment. We are going to create a batch. Before that is set up, if you are a first-time Inventory Lab user, or even if you've been using this for a while and you aren't quite sure about some of these settings, I'm going to hop over there and show you the settings that I use. So what you are going to do is click on the top right on your name, Settings. Underneath this General tab, you can default where this landing page is going to take you. So when you go to inventorylab.com, sign in, most of the time you just need to go to list, so that's where we have ours. You have various types of notifications if you want to go through and mess with all of that. Commingling is one that I have set because if an item is listed under commingling, I typically don't ship commingled items, so I want to make sure that I'm notified if something is commingled so I can go ahead and resolve that. Here you can create a list of all of your different suppliers. MSKU customization. This is a common thing that a lot of people don't even know you can do with an Inventory Lab. So what this means is when you sell an item, if you were looking at your Amazon Sellers app, typically what you will see is a custom MSKU, and it's just a bunch of random numbers assigned to each product. You can actually input information within there. So for those of us that like to use our Amazon Sellers app to look and review our sales that are happening, you can know right up front just by looking at that MSKU, and you don't need to go into any type of reports or data to find this info. Within the product MSKU itself can tell you your buy cost, your supplier, what the rank was when you bought it, all that information you can set up right here. The cool part with Inventory Lab is you don't need to manually input that information. You can set up this right here, which is use variable MSKU. So I went ahead and just reset mine, so you just saw that change, and I'm going to set mine up from scratch exactly how I typically like it. You are going to pop up with this page right here. We are going to add an option. First, I want to know what my buy cost was. Second, I want to know what my supplier was. Third, I want to know what my sales rank was at the time that I did the shipment. That's all the information I'm really curious about. Again, there's some other options within here. You can see if you look at this drop down, you can even set a custom one where you can manually input whatever custom information you would like. And then this is just personal preference. You can have it default to whatever type of separator that you would like. Typically just a little underscore or a hyphen will do the trick just fine. So here's a little preview of what that MSKU would look like. Now the count is just going to be the number since you've started using this feature. So you can see this count down here would be 25. That's what that's going to be. So I'm going to hit save formula. That is now set up, and you'll see how this works on the back end when we do the shipping portion. Next big thing, you want to go to printing. There's a couple different options here. Let me explain those. Number one, you want to ensure that your printer is set up the right way. So I think as Amazon sellers, most of us are probably using a Dymo. I use a Dymo 450. We also use a Rollo for the shipping labels, but for the actual FNSKU or the item labels, we use a Dymo 450. So what you are going to do is hit setup new printer. IL print is the little application that's going to automatically detect what type of printer and label size that you have. Once you finish installing that, hit next. Once you have IL print installed and the application is running in the background, here you will select which printer. Dymo 450 is what we use for our FNSKU labels. Printer, thermal printer is actually a Rollo, which we use for our shipping labels. Here we want to select the one you are going to be using for your item labels, those FNSKUs. So a Dymo 450 is what we are using here. Crucial thing to remember, make sure you are choosing the right label size. A lot of times people will post in Facebook groups that their item labels are coming out sideways or just not the right fit. If you are using typical multi-purpose labels, which are 2 1/4 by 1 1/4, that is going to be the 30334 size. And also, if you're going to reorder these labels, you can just type in Dymo 30334 labels on Amazon.com, and you can find various suppliers fairly inexpensive to reorder some of these labels third party as well. Once that is set up, hit complete. Now this will be defaulted. That's only a one-time setup you have to do. All right, next, label printing. These are the 3 that we personally use. If you have any use for some of the other ones, you could do that. We want to turn on after adding to FBA batch. I'm going to show you guys what each of these does once we start the shipping. This just means if I add a product to list through Inventory Lab or adding to batch, this means that the item label is automatically going to print out with me having to print it out manually. If you are doing merchant fulfilled batches, you can also turn that on. We don't mess with that here, so we're not going to worry about it. After quantity edit is on, this just means if I enter a product quantity 9, it's going to print out 9 labels. Now later on down the prep station, I might figure out, oh, I actually have another one. I have 10 total. I'm going to go in there, edit my quantity to 10, and when I hit save, it will automatically detect I added an extra one and will print out 1 extra label for me. You also have an option to do scan to pack. This just means that you can choose to have your item labels printed as you are scanning during the box contents process. And this last one is one of the main reasons we use Inventory Lab for all of our shipping is you can include the expiration date right on the FNSKU label. The problem with doing shipments through Seller Central, if you are dealing with expiration date products, per Amazon TOS, you have to have that expiration date label on the product itself. So this means you are having to touch the product another time. And in the shipping world, you want to touch products as few times as possible to be the most efficient. So if you do Seller Central shipping, you have to print off the FNSKU label, and then you have to use something like a Dymo program to print off another label. So 2 labels, one is going to be for expiration. So for that reason alone, expiration dates being able to be printed right on the label is one of the biggest benefits of shipping through Inventory Lab. So those are the 3 toggles that we have turned on. Again, if you have any preferences for the other ones, you can do that as well. Last thing that we are going to click on is calculations. So in this tab, this is actually how you set your FBA inbound shipping rate. That way, when you are listing your products, which we'll show you in a second, it's going to determine your estimated profit, which includes your shipping per pound. How it is determining that is you can input this ahead of time as a rough estimate. Now, throughout the last 5.5 years we've been doing this, we find that our estimated shipping really comes down to roughly between 25 and 30 cents per pound. But just as a safety net, an extra buffer, a cushion, we recommend you put 60 cents per pound in here. Now, being here in Oregon in a sales tax-free state, I don't have to mess with this, but if you do have sales tax, you can actually input that right here as well, which will give you a more clear estimation of your actual potential profit. So when you are actually listing your items or doing research with Inventory Lab, all these calculations can be pre-done for you. And this one is actually the last tab we're going to click on is list. We sell 99.99% all new items, so we don't really need to use this feature. But if you are doing books or any other used items, you can have preset condition notes in here. So under condition, you can go to, let's say, use like new. You can then type something out like open box and then put in whatever condition you want. And if you have many items that are going to be roughly about the same default note, and every time you select use like new on the shipping side, this is the default message or condition note that will pop up for you. So if you do used items, that's a very handy feature right there. One other one that you can set up too is total cost calculator. So if we turn this on, I'll show you on the actual shipping side what this specifically does, but it's going to have a pop-up window where you enter your buy cost. It will enter your sales tax for you, and then it gives you a more clear profit that you'll be making. And then also if you plan on doing your box contents through here, which most of the time that we do, you can have that defaulted to be turned on here as well. We use Aura as our repricer, so we don't need to mess with this, but if you want to use any type of auto repricing rules, you can set those up here. And then this is another one that's very handy, is remember last entry. So within Inventory Lab, it's also keeping track of all of your accounting as well. So you can enter your buy cost, your condition, expiration dates, anything like that can be remembered. So if you're entering multiple different items, same supplier, etc., it will default to autofill whatever your last entry was. So you simply just go through here, checkbox which ones are going to be beneficial for you. And that covers pretty much all of the basic settings that we personally use for our Inventory Lab. I just wanted to show you that part before we get into the actual shipment so that you can make sure everything is set up properly. All right, now that all of that stuff is out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in and do the shipment and show you guys start to finish how this whole process works. First thing we are going to do is hit new batch. And if you are brand new to using Inventory Lab, this is going to be a lot of information up front. Very basic. Let me walk you through it. Batch name. This will just auto default to whatever time and day that it is. You can just leave it as is. Real quick, I can't make this up. There's a frog in our warehouse somewhere. I'm just going to leave this clip in as a little blooper reel for you guys. There's a frog. Now that the frog is simmered down a bit, I like to have a little bit more batch information here than just random numbers. So typically if I have a shipment of, for example, this one, I would call something like, let's just do it live. So I might put something like WM for Walmart, and then this is all toys. So I would just put Walmart toys, and then today's day, which is 2/22. So when I'm quickly scrolling through my inbound FBA shipments on my Seller Central app or on Seller Central itself, I'm able to see the titles of all these different batches. So I'm going to quickly be able to reference, okay, this is the toy batch I just sent in. Maybe it's checking in, maybe it's closed, maybe there's something I need to reconcile. If you are doing any type of buy list, you can go and select a file and upload that. Ship from is just going to be your address and your business name. Packing type. Individual products is probably what most RA, OA sellers are going to be utilizing. This is just a random array of stuff you picked up via retail or online arbitrage. Case pack is typically going to be if you are doing more wholesale, or maybe you did find something RA that you did get case packs of. If you have enough to justify doing the one big shipment for it, you can do case packed as well. For the most part though, individual products is what most of you are going to be going with. Channel is FBA, workflow type. This is where you have two different methods of doing an FBA shipment through Inventory Lab. One is going to be private, one is going to be live. Here's the biggest difference. Private is great to use if you plan on leaving your shipment overnight or for a few days. What happens in private is the batch just stays open as long as you need it to. You can go in and add new products, edit quantities, do all the things that you need to do. Then when you are ready to close out the batch, you are able to hit the submit button. It will split into which warehouses it's going, and then you do your box contents from there. If you are doing live, this is going to tell you ahead of time live where your warehouse locations are. So if I check in 5 units of one type of product, it's going to tell me right up front which warehouses it's going to go. Personally, I list always in private. I have had, and it's not common, I've had a couple times when I'm trying to do a live batch, I get everything pre-boxed based on the warehouse locations it's telling me. Then surprise, at the end of the shipment, it has changed those locations or split products in different ways. So personally, I always use private. You can test out both and see which one works for you. If you want to read and check out more about the actual differences between the two, click on this right here. It will take you to this page and show you the pros, cons, etc. Next is going to be provide box contents. This is if you want to do the box contents through Inventory Lab itself, which is what we do, or if you prefer to do your box contents with another software, or if you want to do it through Seller Central itself, you want to click off. This will pop up if you want to do a default. Personally, we usually use box contents on through Inventory Lab. Like I mentioned before, if you want to use some type of min or max price, you can do that right here. We use Aura as our repricer, so we don't have to worry about this. Shipping method, for most of you, it's going to be small parcel delivery. This is going to be basic UPS shipping, the partnered carrier. If you are doing palletized shipments, this is called LTL or less than truckload. But I think for the most part, most of you are probably going to be going with small parcel here. So that's how we set up our batch. Hit create. Now we are good to start listing our items. So first and foremost, you can see the variable MSKU is showing you right here the order of that information that's going to be on each label, the order of the information that's going to be given to you on those MSKUs. Now this is a little bit of a newer, at the time of this video, option here. It shows Amazon Plus unlisted. Unlisted just means you can input your inventory that you have on hand ahead of time without actually making a batch, and it will show as unlisted inventory. So when you go to do your shipment, you can just pick and pull which products you want to put in that shipment from your unlisted inventory. I have not listed any of this yet, so I just need this to search the actual Amazon catalog. Now from here, I'm literally just going to pick one end of the table and start working my way over. I typically will pre-print all of my labels ahead of time. Once I'm done with that, I'm away from the computer and I can then switch my focus to just prepping products. This is just going to come down to personal preference and which way you find is most efficient for you. It might make more sense if you were in a very tight space. If you print the label, prep your product, get it out of the way, and then move on to the next. I prefer to do my work in batches if I'm just working by myself. Now, if you have somebody that's helping you do the shipment, the best part is you can be here at the computer driving the whole shipment. When the label is printed, you set it on top of the product, and then whoever's helping you just follows right behind you and does the prep. So by the time you're done checking in, all of your prep is done, and then you just work on your box contents. Just being myself, solo, because I have our entire staff over at the other warehouse working on client shipments today. I'm going to be doing this in batches myself. So batch 1 is pre-print all of the labels. Batch 2 is going to go through and prep everything, and then the third batch is going to be me doing the box contents.